For years, everyone laughed at him, just a janitor in a forgotten building. But when he uncovered something hidden for centuries, the world would never mock him again. This is a story of how one man's perseverance unearthed a secret that rewrote history. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications. Stories like this remind us that greatness can be found in the most unexpected places. The Invisible Man, the old courthouse in Dripping Springs, Texas, had seen better days. Its once grand columns were chipped, its red brick faded to a dull rust color, and the wooden floors groaned under every step, like a tired old man. The town had long forgotten its importance, and now it was just another relic waiting to be torn down, another casualty of progress. Ethan Cole wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, his callous fingers gripping the mop tightly. At 52, he had spent the last 15 years cleaning this building, buffing its floors, polishing its brass fixtures, and listening to the echoes of its empty halls. Most days he was invisible, just part of the background, like the dust he swept away. The construction crew working on the building's renovation, which really meant demolition, barely glanced at him as they passed. They were young, loud, and full of jokes at his expense. "Hey, old-timer." One of them, a guy named Rick with smirk permanently etched on his face, called out as Ethan knelt to pick up a stray nail. "You find any gold under those floorboards yet?" The others laughed. Ethan forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes, and went back to work. He was used to it. That evening, as the last of the crew packed up and left, Ethan stayed behind, as he always did. The courthouse was quiet at night, the kind of quiet that made you feel like you were the only person left in the world. He liked it that way. No one to laugh at him. No one to remind him that he was just a janitor. He rammed the mop over the worn wooden floors one last time, the rhythmic squeak of the wet fibers the only sound in the empty building. Then his mop caught on something, a loose tile near the judge's old bench. Frowning, he knelt and pried at the edge with his fingers. The tile lifted with a creak, revealing a hollow space beneath. His breath hitched. Inside the shallow cavity sat a small metal box, rusted with age, the kind of box that held secrets. Ethan's hands trembled as he pulled it out. The metal was cold, rough against his skin. He hesitated. What if it was nothing? What if it was just some old paperwork, forgotten and worthless? But then he opened it. Inside, wrapped in brittle, yellow paper, was a leather-bound journal. The cover was embossed with a strange symbol, a serpent coiled around a sword. The pages crackled as he turned them. The ink faded but still legible. Most of it was in Spanish, a language Ethan barely understood, but one page near the end was in English. Scrawled in frantic handwriting, it read, "If found, do not trust the men in suits. They killed us for this." Ethan's blood ran cold. A noise from the hallway made him jerk his head up. Had someone just walked in? The courthouse was supposed to be empty. He shoved the journal into his coat pocket and stood, heart pounding. The sound came again, a footstep, or just the old building settling. Then a voice. "Hello? Anyone here?" Ethan exhaled. Just a night security guard, doing his rounds. But as he turned to leave, his foot brushed against the loose tile again. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt something he hadn't in a long time. The thrill of discovery. Because whatever this journal was, it wasn't just some forgotten trash. It was a warning. And he was the only one who knew. The first clue. The journal burned in Ethan's pocket like a stolen secret as he walked home that night. The streets of Dripping Springs were quiet, the occasional flicker of a porch light casting long shadows across the pavement. He kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see those men in suits from the journal's warning lurking behind him. But there was no one, just the wind rustling through the oak trees and the distant hum of a lone car engine. His small house on the edge of town was as he left it, dim, cluttered, and safe. He locked the door behind him, something he rarely bothered with before tonight, and pulled the journal from his coat. The leather was cracked with age, the pages brittle under his fingers. He set it carefully on the kitchen table, then hesitated. What if this is dangerous? But curiosity had already sunk its teeth into him. He flipped through the pages again, squinting at the faded Spanish script. He recognized a few words, oro gold, Tunel tunnel, peligro danger. His high school Spanish was rusty, but enough to know this wasn't just some old ledger. Then he found another page in English, tucked between the others like it had been added later. The entrance is beneath the courthouse. Follow the serpent's path. But beware, the Brotherhood watches. Ethan's pulse quickened. The Brotherhood? He needed help. The next morning, he waited outside the Dripping Springs Historical Society, shifting from foot to foot as tourists milled about. The journal was tucked safely in his backpack, wrapped in an old towel to protect it. Dr. Lila Reyes, the town's resident historian, was the only person he could think of who might know what this was. She was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, the kind of woman who could silence a room with a single look. When Ethan had first approached her about old courthouse records years ago, she dismissed him with a wave. But now he had something real. She finally emerged from the back office, frowning when she saw him. "Ethan, you're not here to ask about those floorboard repairs again, are you? I told you the county handles." "I found something," he blurted out. "Something old." Her expression didn't change, but something in her gaze sharpened. "Show me." He led her to a quiet corner and carefully pulled out the journal. The moment she saw the serpent and sword symbol, her breath caught. "Where did you get this?" Her voice was low, urgent. "Under the courthouse, a loose tile near the bench." She flipped through the pages with the precision of someone who had handled centuries-old documents before. Her frown deepened. "This isn't from the 1800s, she murmured. "The paper, the ink, this is much older. And this symbol?" She tapped the serpent and sword. "It's tied to a lost Spanish expedition. The Camino Real Secreto." Ethan blinked. "The what?" "A secret route," she said. "Rumored to have been used by a splinter group of conquistadors who broke off from the main expedition in the 1500s. They were supposed to have hidden gold somewhere in this region, but no one ever found proof." She paused. "Until now." Ethan's mind raced. Gold? Was that what this was about? But then Lila turned to another page, her finger tracing a crude sketch of a tunnel system beneath a building. "This matches local legends," she said slowly. "Stories about outlaw hideouts, secret passages. But the dates here are all wrong. This wasn't drawn by outlaws. This was drawn by someone running from them." Ethan swallowed. Running from who? Before she could answer, the bell above the door jingled. 2 men in dark suits walked in. Ethan's blood turned to ice. They were clean-cut, polished, the kind of men who looked like they belonged in a government office. But their eyes scanned the room with a calculated intensity that made the back of Ethan's neck prickle. One of them, tall, with a razor-straight part in his hair, smiled at the receptionist. "We're with the Federal Historical Society. We're conducting a survey of pre-demolition artifacts in the area." Ethan's fingers tightened around the journal. Federal Historical Society? That sounded official. But the journal's warning screamed in his mind. Do not trust the men in suits. Lila's hand clamped onto his wrist under the table. Her grip was iron. "Don't react," she whispered. The men were moving through the exhibits now, their polished shoes clicking against the hardwood. One of them paused near a display of old maps, feigning interest, but his gaze kept darting toward the back room. Toward them. "We need to leave," Lila muttered. "Now." She stood abruptly, sliding the journal back into Ethan's backpack with a practiced motion. "Bathroom break," she announced loudly, then steered Ethan toward the rear exit. His heart hammered against his ribs. Were they overreacting? Maybe these guys really were just historians. But then, as they pushed through the back door, he heard one of the suits say, "Check the security footage. I want to know who he talked to." Lila didn't stop walking until they were 2 blocks away, hidden behind the feed store. "Who the hell are they?" Ethan hissed. Lila's face was grim. "If they're who I think they are, they're not historians." She nodded at his backpack. "They're after that, and they'll do anything to get it." Ethan's mouth went dry. Somewhere beneath the courthouse, there was a secret. And now, he was the only thing standing between it and the men who wanted it buried. The Watchers. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly as Ethan and Lila ducked into the shaded alley behind the feed store. Dust kicked up beneath their feet. swirling in the dry heat. Ethan's backpack suddenly felt heavier, the journal inside like a live grenade. They'll do anything to get it. Lila pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. We need to get somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't think to look. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. My place. Too obvious. She hesitated, then nodded to herself. There's an old hunting cabin outside town. Belongs to a friend. No one's used it in years. Ethan wanted to ask how she knew about it, but the urgency in her voice stopped him. The two men in suits had looked official, but something about them had set his nerves on edge. The way they moved, too smooth, too deliberate, like predators. They split up to avoid drawing attention. Ethan took the long way home, cutting through back streets, his shoulders tense with every passing car. When he finally reached his house, he packed fast, water, a flashlight, his dad's old hunting knife, just in case. The journal lay on his kitchen table, its serpentine sword symbol glaring up at him. He flipped to the page with the tunnel sketch again. The lines were rough, but the shape was unmistakable. A network of passages beneath the courthouse, leading, where? A knock at the door froze him mid-thought. 3 sharp raps. Ethan's breath caught. He wasn't expecting anyone. The knock came again, harder this time. Slowly, silently, he crept to the window and peered through the blinds. A woman stood on his porch, early 30s, dark hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing jeans and a leather jacket despite the heat. Not a suit, not one of them. But her posture was all tension, her eyes scanning the street like she was being followed. Ethan hesitated, then opened the door a crack. Yeah. The woman's gaze locked onto him. You're Ethan Cole. Not a question. Who's asking? She pulled out a press badge. Just Molina, Austin Chronicle. I think you're in trouble. Ethan's grip tightened on the door. What do you want? She leaned in, voice dropping. I've been tracking a group, men in suits, fake federal badges. They've been digging through historical records all over the state, always asking about the same thing, lost Spanish gold. Her eyes flicked past him to the journal still open on the table. And I think you just found it. The cabin was exactly as Lila had described, small, weathered, and hidden deep in the scrubland outside town. By the time Ethan and Jess arrived, Lila was already there, pacing the porch. Who's this? She demanded the second they stepped out of Jess's truck. Reporter, Ethan said. She knows about the suits. Lila's eyes narrowed. How? Jess didn't flinch. Because I've been investigating them for months. They call themselves a brotherhood. Ever heard of them? Lila went very still. Ethan pulled out the journal. That name's in here. Beware the brotherhood. Lila exhaled sharply. They're a myth. A secret society tied to old Spanish families, supposedly guarding lost relics. Most historians think they're just a legend. They're real, Jess said, and they kill people who get in their way. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Inside the cabin, they spread the journal out on a rickety table. Lila traced the tunnel map with her finger. If this is accurate, there's an entrance beneath the courthouse basement, probably hidden behind old storage. And the Brotherhood knows about it, Jess added. That's why they're here. They're cleaning house before demolition. Ethan stared at the sketch. What's down there? Lila's voice was quiet. Proof. Of what? That history is wrong. She tapped the journal's last English passage. They killed us for this. This wasn't just about gold. It was about silencing someone. Jess pulled out her phone, showing him a photo of a stone carving, another serpent and sword. I found this in an old mission ruin south of here. Same symbol, same group. Ethan's head spun. None of this made sense. He was just a janitor. How had he stumbled into some centuries-old conspiracy? A sound outside made them all freeze. Footsteps, too heavy to be an animal. Lila killed the lantern. Darkness swallowed the cabin. Ethan's hand found the hunting knife in his pocket. The doorknob turned. Slowly, silently. Then, a bang. The door flew open. A flashlight beam cut through the dark, blinding them. Federal Historical Society. A familiar voice said, The tall suit from earlier stepped inside, his polished shoes gleaming in the moonlight. "Did you really think we wouldn't find you?" Behind him, a second man raised something metallic. A gun. Ethan's heart stopped. The suit smiled. Hand over the journal. "Or this ends very badly." The hidden chamber. The gun gleamed dully in the dim light, its barrel unwavering. Ethan's fingers tightened around the knife in his pocket, but he didn't dare move. Not yet. The taller suit, Federal Historical Society, yeah right, stepped farther into the cabin, his flashlight sweeping over them like a prison searchlight. His smile was all teeth, no warmth. "You've been busy," he said, nodding at the journal on the table. "That doesn't belong to you." Lila's voice was steel. "And it belongs to you?" The man ignored her, his gaze locking onto Ethan. "You're just a janitor. Walk away now and you live." Something about the way he said it, like Ethan's life was a small, discardable thing, sent a hot rush of anger through him. He'd spent years being invisible, being nothing to people like this. But not tonight. Jess shifted slightly beside him, her fingers brushing against her phone. The second suit noticed and raised a gun higher. "Try it, reporter. See what happens." Ethan had to think fast. The cabin had a back door, but it was rusted shut. The windows were too small. They were trapped. Unless... He let his shoulders slump, playing defeated. "Fine. Take it." He nudged a journal forward with his elbow, but his other hand stayed in his pocket, gripping the knife. The tall suit reached for it, just as Ethan yanked the lantern off the table and hurled it at him. Glass shattered. Kerosene splashed. For one heartbeat, everything was darkness and confusion. Then Jess was moving, tackling the second suit toward the door. The gun went off, a deafening crack, but the shot went wide, splintering the ceiling. "Run." Lila grabbed Ethan's arm, dragging him toward the back. The suits were shouting, the taller one coughing as kerosene fumes filled the air. They burst out the rear window, landing hard in the dirt. Jess was right behind them, her cheek bleeding from a graze. No time to stop. They ran. The courthouse basement was colder than Ethan remembered, the air thick with the scent of mildew and old stone. They'd circled back to town under cover of darkness, slipping into a side entrance Jess knew from a past investigation. Now, standing in the flickering glow of his flashlight, Ethan stared at the wall the journal had described. It looked ordinary, just stacked limestone and crumbling mortar. But according to the sketch, behind it lay the entrance to the tunnels. Lila ran her hands over the stones, searching. There has to be a trigger. A loose brick, a lever. Jess kept watch by the stairs, her phone out. Those suits won't stay down for long. Hurry. Ethan's fingers brushed something odd, a single stone, smoother than the others, with a faint indentation at its center. He pressed it. Nothing. Then, with a groan of grinding rock, the wall shifted. A hidden door, just wide enough to slip through. The smell that wafted out was ancient, damp earth and something metallic like old blood. Lila's flashlight revealed a narrow staircase descending into blackness. Jess exhaled sharply. "You sure about this?" Ethan wasn't, but the sound of distant voices upstairs decided for him. The Brotherhood had found them. He stepped into the darkness. The tunnels were older than the courthouse, older than the town itself. The walls were carved with symbols, some Native American, some Spanish, some a blend of both. Murals told a story, armored men and robed figures working side by side, then fighting, then... Ethan's breath caught. The final mural showed a massacre. Lila traced the painted figures with shaking hand. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a tomb. Jess's light landed on a pile of bones in the corner. Skeletons in rotted conquistador armor, their skulls crushed. Then something glinted in the dust. A chest. Ethan knelt, brushing off centuries of dirt. The serpent and sword symbol was engraved into its lid. His pulse roared in his ears as he lifted it open. Inside lay gold coins, a rusted dagger, and a folded map labeled Camino Real Secreto. Lila sucked in a breath. This is it. The proof. Jess snapped photos frantically. "We need to get this out. Now." But noise from the tunnel entrance froze them. Footsteps, and a voice echoing off the stone. leave the relics, or join the dead. The suits had found them, and this time there was nowhere left to run. The chase. The beam of a flashlight cut through the tunnel's darkness, illuminating swirling dust and the glint of the gun barrel leading the way. Ethan's fingers tightened around the ancient map as he backed away, his boots scraping against stone. The Brotherhood wasn't just after the treasure. They were here to erase history. Lila grabbed his arm, her whisper urgent. There's another passage behind the mural. Move. Jess didn't hesitate. She shoved the chest lid shut with a loud clang and bolted toward the far wall, where the painted massacre ended in a shadowed crevice. Ethan followed, the gold coins heavy in his pocket, the dagger tucked into his belt. His heart hammered so hard he could barely hear the suit shouts over the blood rushing in his ears. The hidden passage was tight, the walls pressing in like a throat. Cobwebs clung to Ethan's face as he crawled, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and old iron. Somewhere ahead, Jess's flashlight flickered, then vanished. Drop. Ethan hit the ground just as a gunshot cracked behind them. Stone splintered where his head had been. Lila yanked him forward. They're not shooting to miss now. The tunnel twisted sharply, then dropped into a vertical shaft. A rusted ladder led downward, its rungs groaning under their weight. Ethan went last, kicking loose a rotted support beam as he descended. The wood shattered on the tunnel floor below, taking a cloud of dust with it. That won't hold them for long, Jess muttered. They emerged into a wider chamber, the ceiling arched like a chapel. Here, the murals were clearer. Spanish soldiers and native warriors locked in battle, but not as enemies. They fought together against a common foe, men in hooded robes bearing the same serpent and sword symbol. Lila's breath caught. The Brotherhood wasn't protecting the gold. They were stealing it, and they slaughtered anyone who knew. A noise above made them freeze. The suits were climbing down. Ethan's flashlight beam landed on a collapsed section of wall, a sliver of moonlight bleeding through. There, that's our way out. They clawed through the rubble, dislodging stones as the voices behind them grew louder. Don't let them reach the surface. Ethan shoved the last rock aside, revealing a storm drain opening onto the street behind the courthouse. Fresh air never smelled so good. Jess went first, scrambling onto the pavement. Lila followed. A gunshot ricocheted off the drain pipe. Ethan turned just as a taller suit dropped into the chamber, his pistol raised. Last chance, Janitor. Ethan didn't think. He hurled the rusted dagger. It wasn't meant to hit. The suit flinched, and in that second, Ethan lunged through the gap, dragging Lila with him. They ran, not toward town, not toward safety, but into the Texas night where the real secret still waited, because the map in Ethan's pocket didn't lead to gold. It led to war. The safe house. The pickup truck's engine growled as Jess swerved onto a dirt road outside town, headlights off. In the back seat, Ethan clutched the ancient map, its edges crumbling between his fingers. Lila leaned over the front seat, her voice tight. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't think to look, Jess said. The truck bounced over ruts as they climbed into the hill country. My grandfather's ranch, abandoned since the 90s. Ethan watched the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights chasing them. But the night stayed dark. For now, the ranch house was a skeleton of peeling paint and sagging porches. Jess kicked open the door, revealing a time capsule of dusty furniture and yellowed newspapers. A rifle hung above the fireplace. They'll track your phones, Lila said immediately. Jess was already prying the batteries out. No service out here anyway. She tossed Ethan the rifle. You know how to use that? He checked the chamber. Enough. They barricaded the doors and gathered around the kitchen table. The map spread between them. Moonlight through broken windows painted silver lines across its surface. This isn't just directions, Lila murmured. She traced faded ink, not just paths, but names. These are the Brotherhood's original targets. Missions, settlements, all places they raided. Jess stiffened, including the Alamo. Ethan's head snapped up. What? Look. She pointed to a smudged notation near San Antonio. Sangre de los Inocentes. Blood of the innocent. There's something under it they didn't want found. A floorboard creaked upstairs. All three froze. The house had been empty. Ethan raised a rifle as footsteps moved above them. Slow, deliberate. Jess grabbed a rusted hatchet from the wall. Lila snatched the map, shoving it into her boot. Then silence. Too long. A drip sounded from the ceiling. Then another. Not water. Blood. It splattered onto the table between them. Ethan barely had time to register the shadow dropping from the rafters before the first knife flashed. The Brotherhood hadn't followed them. They'd been waiting. Blood and secrets. The attacker landed like a panther, all coiled muscle and lethal intent. The knife flashed again, aimed straight for Lila's throat. Ethan reacted without thinking. He swung the rifle like a club, catching the man across the temple with a sickening crack. The assassin crumpled, but more shadows detached from the ceiling. 2, maybe 3. Jess didn't hesitate. She hurled the hatchet. It thudded into a wooden beam, missing its target but buying them seconds. Out! Now! Ethan grabbed Lila's arm and bolted for the back door. The night air hit them like a slap. They sprinted for the tree line, branches whipping at their faces. Behind them, the ranch house erupted in noise, shattering glass, splintering wood. The Brotherhood wasn't playing games anymore. They didn't stop running until the house was just a dark smudge in the distance. Jess bent double, gasping. How did they find us? Lila's hands shook as she pulled the map from her boot. They're not following us. They're hurting us. She pointed to a barely visible symbol near the Alamo notation, a tiny serpent. This isn't just a map. It's a trap. They want someone to find whatever's buried there. Ethan's blood ran cold. Then why kill everyone who gets close? Because, Jess panted, they're not protecting gold. They're protecting a story. And we're about to rewrite it. A twig snapped in the woods. They weren't alone. The first gunshot took Jess in the shoulder. She went down hard, blood blossoming across her flannel shirt. Ethan dragged her behind a fallen log as more shots peppered the trees. Lila! The map! He shouted. But Lila wasn't listening. She stood slowly, hands raised, facing the darkness. Enough! She said, voice steady. I know who you are, Raphael. Silence. Then a man stepped into the moonlight, tall, silver-haired, with a face like carved stone. The pistol in his hand didn't waver. You were always too clever for your own good, Lila, he said. Ethan's breath caught. They knew each other. Jess groaned, clutching her shoulder. What the hell? Lila didn't look back. My grandfather told me stories. About the Brotherhood. About you. She took a step forward. You're not just some secret society. You're family. Raphael's smile was ice. And family betrays family first. He raised a gun. Ethan moved on instinct. He tackled Lila just as the shot rang out. The bullet grazed his ribs, burning like fire. He rolled, coming up with Jess's fallen pistol, and fired blindly into the trees. Shouts, running footsteps. Then silence. When Ethan dared to look, Raphael was gone. Jess sat up, pale but alive. Next time, warn me about the murder's relatives. Lila's hands trembled as she pressed them to Ethan's bleeding side. The Alamo, she whispered. That's where this ends. That's where the truth is buried. Ethan clenched his teeth against the pain. Somewhere in the dark, Raphael was watching. And now, they had no choice but to walk straight into his trap. The Alamo shadow. The bullet wound in Ethan's side burned like a branding iron with every step. Dawn painted the San Antonio skyline in pale gold as they slipped into the city, their stolen truck abandoned miles back. Jess's shoulder was wrapped in a makeshift bandage, the fabric already soaked through. Only Lila moved without injury, her face set in grim determination. We can't go to a hospital, she said, guiding them through back alleys. The Brotherhood has people everywhere. Ethan gritted his teeth. Then where? Somewhere they'd never expect. The place turned out to be a tiny bookstore near the Riverwalk, its windows cluttered with dusty volumes. A bell jingled as they entered, and the elderly woman behind the counter looked up, then froze. Lila Reyes, she breathed. Child, what have you gotten yourself into? We need the room, Tia Rosa, Lila said. The old woman locked the door without another word. The room was a hidden space behind a bookshelf, barely large in a closet, with a cot and medical supplies. As Tia Rosa cleaned Ethan's wound with practiced hands, Jess collapsed onto the cot, her face ashen. "Who are you?" Ethan asked Lila. She hesitated, then pulled a locket from under her shirt. Inside was a faded photo of a man in 19th century dress, and the same serpent and sword symbol. "My great-great-grandfather was one of them," she said quietly, "a Brotherhood scribe. He realized what they really were and tried to expose them. They killed him for it." She met Ethan's eyes. "This has been my family's fight for generations. I just never thought I'd see it myself." Jess groaned as Tia Rosa probed her shoulder. "So what's under the Alamo?" "A confession." "Worse," Lila said. "Proof." She spread the map on the floor. Up close, the Alamo notation wasn't just words. It was a blueprint. There's a chamber beneath the mission, and inside it, the original Brotherhood ledger. Every name, every crime. Ethan's blood ran cold. "If that gets out..." "It won't just expose the Brotherhood," Lila interrupted. "It'll rewrite Texas history. The Alamo wasn't just a battle for independence. It was a cover-up." Tia Rosa crossed herself. A knock at the bookstore's front door made them all freeze. 3 sharp raps. The Brotherhood's signature. Tia Rosa moved fast, shoving a revolver into Lila's hands. "The cellar. Now." They barely made it down the hidden stairs before the front door splintered open. Footsteps pounded above as Ethan held his breath, Jess's weight heavy against him. Then a voice. "Find them." Raphael's voice. Lila's fingers tightened on the revolver. The cellar wasn't a dead end. A low tunnel, damp and narrow, snaked into darkness. "Where does it lead?" Jess whispered. Lila's smile was grim. "Where else?" "The Alamo." Above them, the footsteps grew closer. Ethan took the lead, his wounded side screaming with every step. Somewhere ahead, the truth waited, and behind them, death. The bones of history. The tunnel smelled of wet earth and old blood. Ethan led the way. One hand pressed his throbbing side, the other tracing the rough stone wall to keep balance. Behind him, Jess's labored breathing echoed in the narrow space, while Lila brought up the rear, the revolver a cold weight in her grip. The darkness was absolute, then a faint glow ahead. Ethan slowed as the tunnel widened into a circular chamber, its ceiling supported by crumbling arches. But it wasn't the architecture that stole his breath. It was the bones. Dozens of skeletons lay scattered across the floor, some still clad in tattered Spanish uniforms, others in simple peasant garb. They weren't arranged with reverence. They'd fallen where they'd been struck down, limbs twisted in final agony. Jess stumbled forward, her flashlight beam catching on a rusted iron box at the chamber's center. "Is that..." "The ledger," Lila whispered. Ethan approached slowly, his pulse hammering. The box was locked, but the keyhole bore the Brotherhood's serpent and sword symbol. Lila reached into her pocket and pulled out her locket, the one with her ancestor's photo. With trembling fingers, she pried open a hidden compartment. A small iron key fell into her palm. "He gave his life to protect this," she murmured. The lock turned with a screech of protest. Inside lay a single leather-bound book, its pages brittle with age. Lila lifted it carefully, revealing the first page, a list of names in elegant, faded script. "These are the original Brotherhood members," she breathed. "Governors, priests, even heroes of the Alamo." Jess's flashlight flickered over the names. This would rewrite everything. Then a sound from the tunnel, boots on stone. Raphael's voice echoed through the chamber, cold and certain. "You should have left history buried." Ethan spun as figures emerged from the shadows. Not just Raphael, but half a dozen others, all armed. Lila didn't hesitate. She tore a page from the ledger and thrust it into Ethan's hands. "Run. Not without you." "The names matter," she hissed. "More than us." Then louder, "The rest is here, Raphael. Come and get it. She raised a revolver. The first shot sparked off stone as Raphael's men scattered. Ethan grabbed Jess's arm and ran for a side passage, one he hadn't noticed before, half hidden behind a collapsed arch. Behind them, gunfire and shouts filled the chamber. The tunnel twisted upward, finally emerging through a grate into the Alamo's courtyard. Dawn painted the old mission in pale pink light as Ethan and Jess collapsed onto the grass, gasping. Somewhere beneath their feet, the final confrontation raged. And in Ethan's grip, the torn page burned like a secret too heavy to keep. The names stared up at him. The truth would out. But at what cost? The truth above ground. The Alamo was quiet at dawn. Tourists wouldn't arrive for hours, and the only sound was the distant hum of San Antonio waking up. Ethan clutched the torn ledger page, the name seared into his memory. Beside him, Jess pressed a hand to her bleeding shoulder, her face pale but determined. "We have to go back for her," she gritted out. Ethan wanted to. Every instinct screamed at him to charge back into those tunnels, gun or no gun. But Lila's last words echoed in his mind. "The names matter more than us." He looked down at the page. These weren't just names, they were proof. Proof that the Brotherhood had been pulling strings for centuries, rewriting history to suit their legacy. Heroes of the Alamo? Some of them had been murderers. Patriots? Thieves. And now the world would know. A muffled explosion rocked the ground beneath them. Dust plumed from a ventilation grate near the mission wall. Jess lurched forward. Lila. But it wasn't Lila who emerged from the smoke. It was Raphael. His suit was torn, his silver hair streaked with soot, but the pistol in his hand was steady. His cold eyes locked onto Ethan. "Give me the page." Ethan stood his ground. "Or what? You'll shoot me in front of the Alamo? How's that for history?" Raphael's smile was thin. "You think this is the first time blood's been spilled here?" A shadow moved behind him. Lila erupted from the smoke like a vengeful spirit, her revolver pressed to Raphael's spine. "But it'll be the last you spill," she snarled. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Raphael laughed. "You won't shoot me, Nieta. I'm your blood." Lila's finger tightened on the trigger. "Funny, that just makes it easier." The gunshot was deafening. Raphael crumpled. Silence. Then sirens in the distance. 3 months later. The headline dominated every major news outlet. Secret Society exposed. The truth behind Texas founding myths. Ethan stood in the back of the press conference, watching as historians pored over the recovered ledger. Lila, now hailed as a whistleblower, fielded questions with quiet authority. Jess's investigative series had won awards, though she still wore her arm in a sling from that night. And the Brotherhood? Gone. Oh! Their descendants were still out there, Ethan knew. But their power? Broken. The names on that page had seen to that. A reporter approached him. "Mr. Cole, as the man who discovered the journal, what's next for you?" Ethan glanced at the Alamo behind them, its walls standing as they had for centuries. Only now, the world knew what really lay beneath. "Me?" He smiled. "I've got a courthouse to clean." Ethan's journey proves that ordinary people can change history. What hidden truths lie in your town? Share this story with someone who needs reminding that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about standing up anyway. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales of unsung heroes.